just
Nikola Jokic holds his own versus Team USA, but the Americans get the win. Shooting is a problem for Serbia, and to me, it shows something that we got to talk about with regards to the Nuggets. Plus, hey, here's a question. What's up with Jamal Murray? All that and more on World's Finest here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us Monday through Friday. We are going to keep 4 shows running here in the offseason as we reach the downtime. We got lots to talk about between Olympics with both Team Serbia and Team USA and Team Canada. We will talk about offseason content. We'll talk about how Russell Westbrook fits in, the bench units, lots of stuff that we're going to continue to talk about. And we're glad to have you with us for every step of the offseason here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. This is the world's finest. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by director of content for DNVR. He's Adam Mares. On today's show, we'll talk about Jamal Murray and what's been up with him, with a weird start for him with Team Canada. We'll talk about shooting with Team Serbia and what it kind of shows about the Nuggets and playing around Nikola Jokic. But we start, Adam, with Serbia's 26-point loss to Team USA in the Olympic opener for both teams. Team USA gets a phenomenal performance from Kevin Durant, who is having a little... I am excited to see. It feels like a turning point in Kevin Durant's arc of his career with public perception. I've been really enjoying the content from Kevin Durant the last couple of weeks from social media, and obviously his play was fantastic. But look, Nikola Jokic does what he does, and he has an absolutely phenomenal game, and his team gets crushed without him, and they wind up losing. Jokic finishes with 20 points, 5 boards, 8 assists. Shooting 8 of 15 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3.
Yeah, that's all the misses were threes.
Yeah, one of notably. But is a plus-minus of 0 against Team USA with LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. The names go on and on.
I think this is his greatest one. Like, we've done these before. Like, he was a plus at a game they lost by whatever. I think this might be his Mona Lisa.
It is. That he played Team USA even
to a draw. Yeah,
he played him to a draw in his minutes, which I'm always like, look, the other 4 guys were on the floor for it, but the minute that he stepped off, they just get absolutely mollywopped. And part of that too has to do with the fact that I will say some of that is exaggerated by the fact that I love Team USA's bench unit. Like, I enjoy it a lot more.
They're like as good as the starters, really. That's the whole.
I like the way that the bench unit plays together. That Bam AD combo is just like set from hell.
Well, they held him to 3 points in those 9 minutes he didn't play. I mean, that's
but it really is. I think there's that part of me that's like, man, this is like the story of Jokic's career. This is the story of what it seems like every game for him. There's that part of me that starts to go like, okay, isn't there something about this? But then I'm like, no, there can't be. Like, this is Team USA. Like, I can't expect Team Serbia to compete with Team USA without its best player on the floor. 2, like, it's entirely different context when it's in Olympic play versus like regular season basketball. Like, it is apples to oranges. So it is a funny recurrent theme. Swipe a tweeted the other day. He's like, just once I would like to see Nikola Jokic play with another all-time player like all the other greats get to do. And like watching these teams fall apart without him and what he's asked to carry, I think is pretty notable. Beyond the box score stuff.
First of all, I just want to say, every team's going to look like this against Team USA. Like, so some of this is because I know the Serbs are going to get really upset about this. Like, it's a good guys. It is a good team by international standards. It's just Team USA is a good team by any standard.
Yeah. Beyond the on-court, off-court stuff, what is like the big takeaway that you had? Let's start with Team Serbia. What was your big takeaway from Team Serbia?
Well, I just want to talk about Jokic, to be honest with you, because this game was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was a really well-played game. I love the way that Team Serbia played. They move the ball quick. They get out in transition. Their transition game in the first quarter of that game was unbelievable. They had a couple fast breaks, like rebounds that they got the ball across half court in 1 second with 2 passes. Pass, like guys just making quick reads. And it was fun to watch that level of just fast mind, fast thinking, and fast reacting. So that was fun. But my big takeaway is this: Yoke. We've been talking about this a little bit. Bearded tan Yoke seems to have a little edge to him more than what we've seen. Like he almost seems a little meaner, a little more intense, a little more angry. And in this game, I felt that. He just played with an anger to him and kicked Joel Embiid's ass. That was a dominant performance. Like only one guy looked terrible on Team USA, and it was Joel Embiid. And Yoke went at him over and over and over again in a way where it was like, man, this is loud. And so that was great. I thought Yoke just looked on top of his game.
What I thought was interesting is that Embiid, in terms of box score stuff, has had a stretch run here in NBA play of having good games against Jokic.
Right.
And there is that part of me that's just like, is this really just an officiating difference? Like, how much of this is just like, and like Jokic can defend him differently because he doesn't have to worry about the
foul baiting. He can just call it
the nonsense.
Yeah.
I was going to use stronger words than that for what he's able to generate, and like actually has to play because Jokic that and one that he had on Embiid was an all-time beauty. Probably like needs to go on an all-time highlight reel for Jokic. Just from the stakes of it, it wasn't like necessarily like insane from compared to like the Anthony Davis Sombor shuffle or anything, but like I was really, and it really is impressive to me that there are so many guys that I think in international competition, and you see that like they are a little uncertain, they are a little uncomfortable, and that goes for even players that routinely play in international competition because the stage is so big. And for Jokic to just go out there and be this guy, to make the reads, to control the game, the fact that you can put him on any floor and that's who he is, like this is an incredible.
I have a hot take for you though. Hit me. Let me get a hot one.
Yep.
They always tell the story of George Mikan, most dominant big man in the NBA. This court, the paint was this narrow, right? So they had to widen it, and all of a sudden he lost all of his power. It was like his game seemed to only be effective within the confines of this one rule, and you change it and everything's off. I think I've long said this about Embiid, and like this is going to be a hater's ball, of course, as we're talking here, but I actually mean this sincerely. When people compare guys, they always will look at the jumper, look at the handle, look at the post up, look at the fall away, and it's like, guys, that's one thing. That's one-on-one scoring. He's very good at it, and he does rely on some of the foul ball drawing, but he's also just good at it in general. But basketball is actually it's more about how you set things up for the other four guys on the court, how you work together. And Jokic is one of the best ever at any position at doing that. And Embiid is actually below average at doing that. And he's on a team right now where the most important skill he has is setting things up for everyone else. And he just isn't good at it. He doesn't know how to do it. He looks out of place. And meanwhile, Yoke, you could literally throw him into water basketball, like put a hit and then swim around. He'll adjust his game and his skill set to it. He can play any type because he has all skills and he understands the interplay of five guys on one court.
I think it's a great take. I'm thinking a lot about KD lately. I've just been thinking a lot about Kevin Durant because last season, like I really was like, I would watch Durant nightly and be like, God, KD's good. Like he's just so good at like the basketball stuff, like dribbling and footwork and release point and
but
shooting.
He's like Embiid to me though, a good one-on-one.
I'm getting there. Yeah. And that's the thing is that so much of NBA, this is the thing. So much of the NBA is built around those one-on-one skills and about guys working as a team or individually to stop those one-on-one players. And that's where a lot of the respect I think comes from is if you're still good at the one-on-one stuff, despite the NBA being built to stop the one-on-one stuff, then that like raises you up a level. I think within the league, I think that's how players talk about. That's one of the reasons why I think there's always a differential between how the players will talk about certain guys and how the rest of the human race will talk about. We'll talk about these players because I'm with you in that. I've always kind of felt I've kind of reached a point where I'm like, I think KD is one of the best individual basketball players I've ever seen. And also I can say like, he does not make his other teammates, like he does not raise them up.
But what's interesting is his role on this team doesn't require that.
Exactly.
And he's lucky. Like LeBron is the table setter.
Yep.
Steph Curry kind of gets the move off ball. He gets the ball a little bit, but Kevin Durant just gets to catch and shoot or go make quick decisions as a scorer. And that's his skill set. So he is in the perfect spot for his. And I think with Embiid, what'll be interesting, I mean, we're talking basketball. This is less about the Nuggets, less about Jokic and more about just basketball in general. But I'm going to be curious to see if Embiid can make quick decisions because that's really the key to it. Don't hold the ball. Can you score without holding it? And KD can catch in the break quick. He's just doing quick stuff. If KD was trying to hold the ball and do his stuff, it wouldn't work either. But he clearly has adjusted at least that part of it. And we'll see if Embiid can.
And I'll say this, I thought Nurse did a really good job last year with giving Embiid options offensively with the Sixers to make things easier for him to do those things. But that's kind of the trick is Jokic is the one that makes it easy for the coach, right? That's kind of not taking anything away from Michael Malone, but that's kind of the key here, is that kind of element to it. One of the reasons the Team Serbia was not able to hang with Team USA was their 3-point shooting, which to me says something about what we're going to need to look at with the Nuggets, and an ongoing question that Adam and I have, which is, what is the role of shooting when you're playing around Nikola Jokic? How important is it? And what does that mean for next season? We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. On Saturday night, I actually went to a Durham Bulls minor league baseball game. Minor league sports are my absolute favorite. The Eagles games here up in Loveland are tremendous. I love going to, every time we go to Carolina now, I make sure that we go to a Durham Bulls game. Got tickets on Game Time. Looked around, was able to get great deals. I found a flash deal that got us great seats in a stadium where there's not a bad one. We were able to see the Bat Dog, which my daughter absolutely adores. It was absolutely phenomenal. Had a great view of the bull that if you hit it, you win a steak, and its eyes glow red and smokes every time that there's a home run. Phenomenal. It was actually just, I love the experience of going to Durham Bulls games. And I got all of that with great seats from Game Time. They've got zone deals where you can save even more. You'll choose a section and Game Time will choose the seats for you. And that way you're going to save a little bit of money. They've got a lowest price guarantee. If you find something else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Adam Mares and me, Matt Mord, breaking down Team USA versus Serbia and the very philosophy of what basketball is on a Monday. This is a very It's a very world's finest show. It's a very world's finest show. In this game, the United States shot 18 of 32 from 3-point range for 56%, which I'm being told I'm hearing that's good. The Team Serbia shot 9 of 37, 24% from 3, and it's a big reason why Team Serbia didn't really have a chance in the non-Jokic minutes. So, Adam, I when I was watching this game and watching those misses, and some of those were, definitely created. It's a reason why Jokic was only a 0 and not a plus. I do wind up coming back to this element, which is there's been like an evolution over the last couple of years of how much the Nuggets have taken threes and all these types of things. And you've really influenced the way that, everyone talks about Nikola, because I don't think anybody understands his game better than you. But one of the things,
vacation so complimentary. I just want to point it out. It's really nice. I got to send you on vacation more.
A little bit of sand, a little bit of surf. Had some great food. Shout out Duck. But I think one of the things I think about a lot is you were one of the first ones to be like, you need to put athleticism around Jokic. And I was like, I don't understand that. Like, his game's so cerebral. Why do you need the athleticism? Like, you were one of the first to kind of point out the connection between him and Fareed, where I was like, well, Fareed's not like a really cerebral player, so that's not really going to work, right? Like, even though, he hits him with some lobs, but you really pointed that out. And when the Nuggets started getting Aaron Gordon and MPJ, even because of his size, like, that's part of the athleticism component here. And like various guys, you kind of point out the strength of adding athletic defenders around Jokic's game. And one of the things that's kind of transitioned is because they've gotten so good at being able to slice and dice on the interior and create high percentage 2-point looks. One of the things that happened last year was like they didn't take as many threes. 3-point percentage wasn't bad. They weren't a bad shooting team, But versus 2023, they were one of the best. I think they were the best true EFG teams. They were only really good. And so one of the things I do kind of wonder is, like, with Jokic's playmaking and everything that he does, you can create these 2-pointers and the efficiency can be really high, which will give you a chance. But if you want to win by margin, I think you need the efficiency of 3-point shooting. And that's where it really does come down to this. And I think through all this, and then there's this part of my brain that goes, so you're saying that making the shot is better than not making it. Great stuff, Matt. Dynamite. Awesome. Phenomenal. But I do think that this is a huge part of it is you need a really good balance of interior and perimeter scoring. And you do need efficiency, I think, in order around Jokic. There's got to be a very balanced ecosystem to make the most of what Jokic brings to the table offensively.
I mean, shooting is just really important in general for a team. You have to have it. And by the way, some of this includes Jokic. Like, part of what makes Jokic so dynamic is his ability to stretch the big out high on the perimeter. I think he would break the game if he could make his threes. And the fact that he is so off on this now for a postseason, a regular season, and now the Olympics, through one game, it is a concern to me. But yes, it's one of the top concerns for me for the Nuggets of this year going into it, is that they just don't have a lot of options at shooting. And if you have an injury to Jamal, Michael Porter, by the way, injury risk players, or Julian Strawther, any of those 3 guys get injured, and Denver's going to be the worst shooting team. No matter who they play, they'll be the worst shooting team in the league. So it's a real concern. You got to be able to space the floor, but shooting is that thing that everybody needs, but you need to be a shooter right? You need to be a shooter and defender, shooter and rebounder, shooter and cutter. And Denver, that's hard to find. Every time a shooter adds an "and" to their skill set, they become more expensive. So that's Denver. That's the pickle that Denver has, but it is a concern.
Yeah, and so I go back and forth on this, which is, I think that there's oftentimes a drag. There is objectively a drag on efficiency when you bring up volume. It's one of the reasons why the best 3-point shooting teams in terms of volume are almost never at the top in terms of efficiency, which sometimes that's confusing, where it's like, why do they take so many threes if they're not good at it? And the answer is because they're so good at it, they take so many threes, and that's why their efficiency isn't as good, because they take so many. Because over the course of attempts, you're just going to kind of drop a little bit. I actually kind of wonder if some of that is like related to the way that the Nuggets have scored with the 2-point range. And like, you've talked about this on other podcasts. Like, you talked about this on Low Post of how, and like everyone's kind of agreed, the offense needs a little bit of a jolt with the Nuggets in terms of creativity and these types of things, where there needs a little bit more dynamicism. And I do think that over time, especially last year, it was like you can't sit there and be like, the Nuggets fell off offensively. Like, no, they were one of the best teams in the league. They had a top 5 half-court offense. They were one of the best teams in the league offensively. Like, all of these things. The problem is that at this point, if you're gonna set the bar as title, then it's like, well, of course, you can't win a title if you don't have an elite offense. I don't think you can in 2024. I just do not believe that you can do that. And so if that's the bar, then it's like, okay, how good is good enough? And then the question is like, you need to maximize everything. You need to make the margin for error, which I always talk about, so wide. This is what the Celtics did. The Celtics were, in my opinion, their resume, they had one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. This was not one of the greatest teams in NBA history. This is not one of the greatest teams among title teams that we've seen. And I'm not trying to just like diminish them out of hate. It's just like, look, man, when I analyze them, that's what I come away with. But you know what they did have? They had a massive margin for error. They had a massive margin for error every game because their offense was so good and their defense was so good. And I don't even know that like, I think that they found a way to maximize that team by balancing everything out. But you don't want that with the Nuggets. You don't want Nikola Jokic taking a back seat. You don't want less Nikola. Like, that's not what you want. And so if you don't want that, then it's like, all right, you better be hyper maximizing everything around Jokic. And that's got to be cutting. That's got to be spacing. That's got to be shooting. And I will say that I am concerned that this Nuggets team, after the loss of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, like, I have real concerns about how much they can maximize spacing and 3-point shooting. And a lot of this is like, because even if you want to be like, look, Christian Brown's above the break, yada, yada, yada. Get it. We've talked about that, right? It's like, all right, yeah, but can CB become the kind of threat that KCP is as a shooter? And that is almost as important, not as, but almost as important as actually making the thing, because making the thing opens up the other stuff.
To me, I don't have hope for that. I just don't think that's a realistic expectation for CB. I think he might make his threes, but will he have the same stretch, ability to stretch the floor? And then if you go even a step further, like, can Denver match this upcoming season, no matter what they do, are they going to be able to match the 3-point effectiveness of the top 3-point shooting teams like a Boston? And I just think the answer is no. There are things that they can do to make themselves better, in my opinion, which includes injecting some new wrinkles into their offense, getting more movement. For guys like Michael Porter and Julian Strawther, I think that's one of the things I really like about Serbia is they really move a lot more in a half court setting than the Nuggets do. But here's the question that is more interesting to me. Assuming Denver can't make up the gap, the talent gap, the 3-point talent gap that they have on the roster, assuming they can't make that up, is it important, or is there another way? And I don't know the answer to that. It is interesting to think about, can Denver zig on this, where you have the Celtics who are going to take 43s a night.
Yeah.
And Denver, who's not, is going to take maybe 28, 29 threes, like the meaningful amount fewer, but they're going to kill you on the glass. They're going to kill you in the paint, and they're going to own another piece of real estate. And now you just battle to see which one wins. That's the question. And I think the math people will tell you no, that the game has been solved to a degree to where you can no longer do those things. But Jokic is such a unique player that if there is a guy out there that can anchor a team that wins off of offensive rebound and floater shots and paint points, it's him and the team built around him. So we'll see.
How much, with the caveat that neither one of us are ever going to tell Nikola Jokic how to play basketball, because that would be probably a bad idea. Is there going to be a point where you're just going to want Nikola Jokic to stop taking so many threes? Like, is there going to be a point where you're just going to kind of be like, I would rather that he just kind of like diminish that part of his game? No,
because he still makes them, and teams will try to jam it up by sinking into the paint. So like, you kind of have to, he's going to have to take them. He's just going to have to be better at making them. I mean, it's the one part of his game that I think you can talk about improving.
By the way, Nikola Jokic is going to be a Nugget for his entire career. I never say things like that, and that's going to happen. Just getting some comments in the.
Well, actually, so I see Bosco out here. The Serbs, in my experience, are usually tough. Bosco's kind of soft, man. This guy over here is complaining that I'm too hard. Probably the number one Jokic guy in the entire universe.
Yes.
That I am putting too much on his plate. It's too hard for him. He should go like Embiid. He should have joined Team USA. You know how good he would have looked if he was on Team USA? He would have looked unbelievable. You saw how good he played. Now
that's what we should do. That's what we should do. Don't
even ban Bosco. I want to watch him kind of flail on this. Honestly, the softest Serb I've ever. I'm assuming Serb. The softest Serb I've ever met in my life.
I'm going to start advocating.
Love you, Bosco. You're free to have your opinion, but that was weak.
I'm gonna start advocating for Jokic to get U.S. citizenship and join Team USA so he can finally play with the level of star that folks think he deserves.
I mean, and then here's the thing: like, in a certain sense, he's not wrong in that Jokic is being asked to do more to win than most players who have had to win. Right? That's the thing. The question is, but we still have to talk about the team within the context of what's available to them. And Denver does not have a great shooting roster. Therefore, Jokic's 3-point shooting becomes more important. Is it fair? No, life's not fair. Part of what makes Jokic great is he overcomes a lot of things that aren't fair. I believe the Serbs call that enot, but Bosco, I don't know if he's familiar with that word.
Up next, one of Jokic's co-stars is not having a great run in international basketball, even though it's early. Jamal Murray comes off the bench and doesn't really do much. What's going on with Jamal Murray? We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Monday, World's Finest with you. Tomorrow, we'll have Swipa with us on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, Adam and I are back on World's Finest. Swipe and Gripe will move to Thursdays. We're doing 4 shows a week for the offseason. Okay, let's talk about Jamal Murray. So Canada gets the win in their opener to Olympic play. They get the win beating Greece 86-79. By the way, talk about a team that does not have a lot around their superstar. Like, I'm watching Giannis and just being like, God, this guy's Sisyphus with this current Greece team. It's rough what Giannis has around him. But Jamal Murray in the win over Greece on Saturday, he comes off the bench. He checks in late in the first quarter. He finishes with 8 points on 2 of 6 shooting in 18 minutes. He had 3 assists, but he also had 3 turnovers. He did hit 2 clutch free throws late. we've seen Jamal miss time, like sit out and then come back. I am of the concern level at this point that Jamal is either still dealing with an injury related to what ended the season or has suffered a new injury at some point in Olympic training, and that because of the narrative around him and because of how much I think this Team Canada does mean to him, this is a special year for Team Canada with the guys that they have available. I think he's trying to push through that, and they're going to get done in late August, and training camp is going to start the last week of September. It's going to be
not far away, man. We were doing the math the other day. I think it's 10 weeks, and now less than 10 weeks.
This is what I hate about international basketball and Olympic basketball in relation to the NBA regular season. It's not that I hate international basketball. It's just like, it's really inconvenient when it's like guys that need 3 months off get a month. It's a huge differential. Yeah. And we saw this honestly back in 2021. I just like want to reiterate this. The last time that we had this kind of gap of a month, and like Jamal did have all of May, all of June, some of July, right? But the last time that we kind of had this was after the pandemic, the bubble run. They had a month for those that ended the season that late, and then they started the 2021 season. And it was not an ultimately great year for Jamal for a number of really horrible reasons. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, he's going to suffer another injury, because one, I don't ever want to put that out into the universe, right? But two, it's also just like, that's not how bodies work. I am reaching a point though where this is concerning that Jamal was injury plagued last year, was good. I want to stress that he wasn't bad last year. It's not like Jamal averaged 15 points on 30% shooting. Like, he was good last year. He didn't make the leap that anyone expected from him. And then the playoff run, and now we're here. Like, I don't know how to look at this and not have a level of concern. I always do the DEFCON rating where 5 is like everything's fine and 1 is imminent nuclear warfare. Like, I'm at 3 heading towards 2 here with Jamal on a DEFCON status based on my concern level for what this is going to look like for the short to intermediate term for him in his career, which is over the next, 18 months. I'm a little concerned at this point.
I mean, I'm very concerned. What I'd say too is Jamal he doesn't look happy. When you watch him play, he looks like he has a weight on his soul. He looks slow. He looks injured. There's guys that just are playing with this pride and joy and excitement, and he just doesn't seem to be having those things. So I'm definitely worried that it's been this long stretch. There's been a lot of conversation. Look, I think Jamal is a very self-conscious guy, probably a very sensitive guy, but a very self-conscious guy. Sometimes the loudest talkers are often the most self-conscious. And I think that this is probably, again, I don't know, this is just me speculating, but I have to imagine this has been a tough offseason for him. He got clowned on the court. Everybody kind of blamed him, as far as players go, blame him for what happened in the playoffs. And now you go through this whole part to Team Canada, and all of a sudden you're looking around and like there's conversations on the internet about whether he should be playing ahead of Andrew Nembhard. 2 years ago, we were saying he was better than Devin Booker. Now we're down here to I think he's better than Andrew Nembhard, but I don't know. Like, might not be the better option. I think I have to imagine he is feeling a lot of stress, but there's a way out of it because he's so talented. And the thing is I really do think that this is going to be a turning point summer for Jamal Murray. And I don't know if he's going to look great in Canada just because he looks so far away from being great in that game. He had some good plays, by the way. Let's not make it sound like he was terrible. He had some really nice, one really nice drive, finish in the lane. That baseline fall away, that's one of his signature shots. It looked phenomenal. That might have been the end of the list, to be honest, but at least he had those. But this is a turning point where I think he's going to have to look in the mirror and say, I am good enough. I am good enough, as all of my fans say, but I haven't been as good. I have been as bad or underperformed, perhaps because of injury, but maybe those injuries are things I can also help mitigate. And that's the question with Jamal right now. I think Nuggets fans have a healthy concern about what they've seen and how long it's been since we've been reminded of how great Jamal Murray really is.
I look at everything this offseason, and there's like a very interesting mix here. I try and get a sense for these teams, and it's hard, when you're not in all these markets and talking to people, but especially it's hard to talk to anybody right now. Everybody's on vacation and gone, but it's like, I try to get a sense for where all these teams are at on a vibe scale. Like I do think that momentum and these type of things are important. Like I think there's a lot of really good vibes with OKC. Like I think OKC is not only like a really great team, but I think there's like a look at what we accomplished in just like the first real run. Like that's just like there is like a feeling of that's just the start. Maybe that leads to overconfidence. Denver, you've got personal tragedy with Aaron, which like my thoughts have been with Aaron Gordon just about every time I've thought about basketball, I've thought about like what Aaron Gordon's going through. You've got Jokic, who clearly, I think you kind of identified this, that his comments about like, look at what they have. What do you want me to do? Like, this is the first time I think that Jokic has ever really reached a level of being a little bit tired of, I mentioned Giannis and Sisyphus. This is the first time I've ever felt like Giannis or like Jokic just kind of looked over while carrying that boulder and been like, get a little sick of this, guys.
All right.
Right.
And 100%. But here's the thing that's so great about sports, Matt. Players and people do have the opportunity to learn along the way. And people could come into your life who show you something you've never been shown before, or articulate something people have been trying to show you, but articulate it or demonstrate it in a way that it makes it click for you. This has happened in my own personal life with, with many things where it's like, I'm banging my head against a wall over something for years, and all of a sudden someone articulates it a way and we're like, oh, that's the problem. Like, okay, here's how I find the solution. This is the way around it. And my hope is that Russell Westbrook, for all of his flaws, and he has a lot, and he's going to be a headache for Michael Malone, but my hope is he will be a success if he does one thing. If he is terrible at everything else, but he gets or demonstrates something to Jamal that makes him realize that's what's needed. This level of intensity, approach, taking care of my body, work ethic, leadership, all those things. If he has a positive impact on Jamal, but is terrible as a player himself, it'll have been a win of a signing, because Jamal is way more important to this team than Russell Westbrook is. And he's way more important to this team than any of the other variables we're going to be talking about, including depth and shooting and everything else. Also, I saw Hurricane, you replying to him here is like, is there anybody that's on his side? Guys, the internet's not real. It's a very self-selecting cross-section. So you are right that the internet has been, Twitter, Reddit, whatever, has been very hard on Jamal Murray, the comment section of YouTube videos. But I also talk to regular human beings, people that are just out in the real world, much different conversation. And Murray, he's taken a lot of heat to the people who are online, because the people who are online are the ones that obsess about this stuff the most. Yeah. Most Nuggets fans go, he had a bad series.
Also, I think everybody wants to have a strong take.
Yeah, on the internet in particular, because
it's not fun to just be like, he's good player, could be better. It's
right.
Not fun. I think you mentioned kind of the Russ stuff. I think the other thing here is what I was kind of trying to get to is there's been so much like negative stuff, but I there's that part of me that's like, this is like a real opportunity for this team to like come together and overcome adversity. Like they're either gonna come together and find the best way to help one another and really come back with a determination on revenge tour. I think is a lot, but it would be viewed there as like internally as a revenge tour to remind people of where they were 2 years ago, and they can overcome all that and it'll be a really satisfying story. Or they're going to splinter apart. Like I look at Michael Malone, and there are a number of things that I'm really concerned with about this upcoming season with Michael Malone. But I also look at the fact that he was at every single summer league practice and as involved as he was as like a real sign of where Malone's head is. Yeah. And that I think a lot about last year. Again, this is professional sports. You go out there and you compete and you get judged on it. But I do look at last year a lot as like, to me, there was, and I said this a lot during the season. We didn't talk about it because I'm not going to do this kind of thing. Malone was dealing with a lot of personal grief last year of the loss of his father. Like that
last year was such a weird year for the Nuggets as a whole. I think it's part of honestly why when we talk about it was mentally and physically taxing. It really is when you go down the line, a lot of people, including Jokic, by the way, who had his own like things with his brother. Obviously the news has come out now that, that fight in the stands now is going to, becomes a legal thing. So I just think that last year was a heavy one for a lot of people. And by the way, including Jamal Murray also has some stuff, he's dealing with. So I think it was a heavy year, but again, athletes, a lot of people have it, and how you respond is really the story. And that's what makes sports so great. That's what makes this whole thing so interesting. And, I will remind you, Jamal Murray didn't just play poorly. He also threw something on the court out of frustration.
Yeah.
Like, to me, a lot of that to me was the tipping point for how people feel about Jamal. I think if they would have just had bad, I do think there would have been a little bit more of a, he had a bad series. He gets injured a lot, but is it his fault? Whatever conversation. But that to me was indicative of something else in him of like, all right, is he not looking in the mirror? Like to do something that childish and that irrational is part of the conversation here. And he's going to have to unfortunately wear it. And I hope he looks internally and comes back with a vengeance and grows from it.
It's doing this as long as we have. I have seen these crazy arcs, and it's amazing to think about the high point of Jamal, 30 points, 50, 40, 90 in the conference finals.
Oh, unbelievable.
30-point triple-double in the NBA finals. Like these things and like how on top of the world he was.
Just how good he was too. Consistently good.
And then like the moment where he throws that towel on the floor is like a professional low moment for him.
Right.
Now there's part of me that's also like, there's that part of me that is like, okay, so do we think that he's like growing or learning from it? And then you have like how he responded to Vinny's questions about his contract. And I'm like, nope, same Jamal, which, hey, he can deal with the media however he wants. And that's got nothing to do with his growth.
Also this question, why don't you give MPJ the same stuff? I mean, part of this is a guy's contract is what the team gave them. That's like everybody would take the contract that they're given. Murray is the number 2. MPJ is like the number 3 or 4. So, if MPJ was the number 2, yes, he's making that kind of money and he needs to play, for the Nuggets to win, he needs to play better than he did in the playoffs, but he's not the number 2. Jamal is.
I've also suggested that if it were possible that the Nuggets should probably look to trade MPJ for multiple role players. Like I've suggested.
I don't know if it's possible. Maybe.
Okay. I don't think it's possible, but I think that that's something that like should be explored.
Also the team is set up to Jamal's strengths. Like the team is not set up to Michael Porter's strengths.
And also you can't really say that constantly. Like I was on here during the low point when Jamal was like at the peak, everyone was like piling on. And I was like, look, like trying to be balanced because like, that's where I'm always at is I'm always trying to be like, okay, that's probably too far. Let's, like I said, when it's up here, I've said this on Twitter, like when you're at the top, trying to bring you back down to street level. When you're in the sewer, trying to bring you up out of the muck. Right. And like, that's where I'm always kind of trying to be. Okay.
Good sport to Bosco, by the way. Shout him out. Cause I was hard on him, but all out of love.
Yeah, no, good for Bosco for hanging in and still taking the comments here on youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. If you want to come in and talk expletive and then get dunked on, you too can join us at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Swipe will be with you tomorrow. World's Finest on Wednesday. We'll talk more about Team USA, Team Serbia. We'll go through all that as well as whatever comes up in the offseason. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.